So for the past few months or so, I've been thinking about branching out from the typical norm and talking about filmographies of famous film directors. There's so many talented people out there who have poured their hearts and their souls into some iconic classics that still get endlessly talked about to this day. And no other director has left as big of an impact on the film industry than the man himself, Steven Spielberg. He is the highest grossing film director of all time, producing so many classics we still remember to this day from the 90s and continues to wow audiences with masterpieces to this day. He really is the kind of man who can take any film genre and roll with them, be it either fun, adventurous stories, mature adult topics, and even the cinematic equivalent of Fortnite. Even as a kid, Spielberg has always been so fascinating to me. The movies he makes are utterly magical and inspiring to both children and adults alike. And today, I thought it would be as good a time as any to rank and review all 34 of his feature films. Now, don't get me wrong, not every single one of his films is a hit, as you'll see soon enough. But for the most part, his track record cannot be beat. I can't wait to get into talking about this mastermind's many hits, as well as his fair share of hiccups. With that said, let's start with the worst of the best.
Endless trash!
Yup, say hello to 1941, arguably the most infamous and forgotten Spielberg film. So this movie was among some of his earlier features in his career, a comedic take on the aftermath of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which took place on December 7th, 1941, hence the name of the movie. Seems like a pretty decent concept for a movie, but where's the funny? Because hot diggity dog is this movie not funny. I didn't laugh, chuckle, or at the very least smile once throughout this, which is ironic since the duo that wrote this film were the same behind the Back to the Future trilogy. It features an incredibly diverse cast, it has over-the-top silly hijinkses, and none of it works on a single level. It tried to do something different and take a chance that I'm not doubting, but screwball humor and chaotic antics absolutely do not work when making a movie about a significant event of World War II. I know, crazy, right? Worst Spielberg movie by a landslide, and only second to it that comes close to its level of awfulness is Always. Another forgotten Spielberg picture, and also one of his most awkward. It's about a man who dies while trying to put out a forest fire and comes back as a ghost to resolve certain issues he faced in terms of his relationship with Helen Hunter and his friendship with John Goodman or whatever the hell. For some reason during the late 80s or early 90s or so, there were movies centered around the main protagonists of their respective stories dying and returning as a ghost to try and fix mistakes they made when they were still alive. This movie is basically that. It's utterly generic, it has a supreme lack of the magic the best Spielberg films, as you'll see later on, have. The cast is decently well acted, but fail in both the humor and emotion. John Goodman tries to be funny, but fails miserably, while Elastigirl and Richard Dreyfuss are just whatever. The story just doesn't know where it's going and makes the experience either boring or super ridiculous half the time. And he's just so casual about this, like, who reacts like this? I don't know, man, I really did not like this movie. There's no charm, there's no immersion, some actually really good visuals here and there, and decent performances to keep it above 1941, but not nearly enough good to maintain interest the whole way through. Bad. Moving on.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
The BFG is one of the weirdest films attached to Spielberg's name. I never read the original book growing up, but I'm sure it's probably much better written and more entertaining than this. I don't even know what there is to say about it, it's just super boring. One of Spielberg's strengths as a director is that when it comes to making films geared towards a slightly younger audience, they don't feel like they're playing down to that audience in any regard. They're charming, magical adventures that both kids and adults can enjoy. The BFG, on the other hand, is just a straightforward kids movie that doesn't take any sort of bold risk or add any sort of substance to its basic premise, brought to life by Spielberg and our good friends at the completely prestigious, well-deserved, successful, and not controversial at all Walt Disney Studios. I mean, sure, the visuals are great, aside from a couple uncanny CGI shots of the Giants. The performances by Mark Rylance and Ruby Barnhill are also really good, but the story's just super dumb. The stakes of the conflict were low, the humor mostly comes from generic quips and slapstick, as well as an entire scene filled with nothing but unfunny fart jokes. There's an entire sequence involving the characters meeting the Queen of England to try and fend off the evil giants. This entire film feels the most childish out of all of Spielberg's filmography. A movie about a girl who gets whisked away by a giant into this magical world should be a fun concept, but it ended up being another worthless piece of slop even by Disney's supremely low standards. Ready Player One. Oh my god, what are we gonna do with you? This is actually a Spielberg film I remember watching a long time ago when it was first released in 2018. I also remember reading the original book before watching the film as part of my 4th grade book talk. I enjoyed the book quite a bit, and I remember the movie being pretty bad. And rewatching it 7 years later, it's still pretty bad. But I also kind of loved it. And like, can you blame me? It has a lot of the same ironic enjoyment I get out of Cars 2 and Chicken Little. Sometimes a movie is so bad on so many levels that you can't help but enjoy every second of it. Once the main character gets transported into this virtual world simulation, it's batshit ridiculousness for the next 100 or so minutes. Enjoy the ride! It's fan service galore, everything is pop culture reference written to the max. The first 10 minutes alone was bloated with it, and I had a blast from beginning to end. Even though the book is better by a wide margin and isn't as played out and dumb, I feel like this film makes for a much more enjoyable experience. Not in the sense that it's a genuinely great time, because it's not, but quite a ride nonetheless. Nothing makes sense, there's no logic, it's just jingling keys and backwards driving, and I just had the time of my life. It's pretty awful, but also one of the greatest cinematic achievements, so you might as well take that for what it's worth. War Horse is a war movie in which the main character is a horse. Yup, what can I even say about a movie like this? I'm sorry, but what emotion is there to get out of an animal that's incapable of expressing any sort of emotion? Because the movie tries really hard to humanize this horse, whose name is Joey, through usage of music flourishing and constant face close-ups, but it ends up making the experience super awkward. I look at his face and I don't see any sort of reason to care for him. It's not like Spirit, but maybe that's because it's an animated movie, so of course the horse characters are emotive. Here, it's just blank stares half the time. The real emotion that comes from this aspect is between it and the actual main character, a boy named Albert, and even then it felt rather superficial. Albert is only given sparse appearances, while the rest of the attention is centered on this horse. I don't think I'm alone in thinking that if this movie was more focused on the human characters, Albert in particular, and we see his struggles during this tense period of war, then the film probably would have turned out better. If it was about him searching for the horse, traveling through Europe, evading the dangers around him, and meeting people who encountered the horse along the way, we could get a glimpse of what exactly the horse got up to when separated from Albert. That would have made for a much stronger conflict and given us more of a reason to care for the horse. Instead, what we got is a story that lacks depth and nuance and absolutely does not mesh with the war portion of the film, which makes no sense, especially taking into account Spielberg's previous war film we'll get to later on that actually had stakes and a clear plot. This sucks, I'll never understand how it got nominated for Best Picture, and I'll probably forget about it within a month. Yep, you probably expected this movie to be ranked this low. The Lost World has always been looked down upon by cinephiles and casual moviegoers alike, as just being a poor, dull, and overall extremely disappointing follow-up to the original Jurassic Park, one of the greatest achievements in the history of classic cinema. Despite having a higher budget than the original, a lot of it feels cheaper. The dinosaurs don't feel as thrilling or dangerous as they did before. All the wonder just feels kinda sucked out. There wasn't as big of a threat, the story was more convoluted, the action wasn't nearly as engaging, the effects weren't as convincing, the characters all feel like shadows of their former selves, especially Dr. Ian Malcolm, who barely resembles the same charisma he had in the original. Everything feels so watered down, and I don't know why. It's like all the ingredients for a perfect, or at the very least solid follow-up were there, but they just don't use them at all. To be fair, this isn't the worst thing to come out of the Jurassic Park series, World Dominion, but it is still pretty bad and ultimately became the precursor to the downfall of Jurassic Park. What was once a cultural phenomenon is now another cash cow for Hollywood. Congratulations, Hollywood, you ruined Jurassic Park. First Terminators, then Aliens, and now you. I'm sorry, but I really could not get into Lincoln. It is so boring. So this film focuses on President Lincoln in January 1865 trying to abolish slavery and political servitude by having the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution passed by the United States House of Representatives. I guess for older people or history buffs, it's kinda interesting, but I'm sorry, I could not get through this movie. It adds no depth to what we already know about Lincoln and the 13th Amendment. A 1-hour documentary could tell you everything you need to know than this 3-hour snooze fest. Most of this movie is just talking from one person to another about ratifying the 13th Amendment, with Lincoln just so happening to be a character within the conflict. I'm not saying I'm opposed to people just talking, as long as the story and direction is tight. Just look at something like 12 Angry Men, or more recently, with Oppenheimer. And I'm sorry, I just don't think this is one of those movies. As for the acting, I don't know, I didn't really feel there was much of it. Yes, Daniel Day-Lewis has got the Lincoln look and voice down, but good acting from a single person is ultimately meaningless without tight storytelling, which this movie, once again, I'm very sorry, doesn't have. It's tedious, and speeches are delivered in the same monotone voice constantly. People rarely had to show any real emotion or raise their voices. It was like they slept and walked through the whole dialogue. I know a lot of people love this movie, and that's perfectly okay, but I don't see it. It was just so dull. If you like it, cool. But for me,
I like it, but not a lot. I don't like it.
I mean, it's alright, like...
oh dear, if it isn't Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Now, I personally don't think this movie was as bad as a lot of people were calling it. It is still pretty weak, and I'll never understand why Spielberg decided to make another one of these things when it already had a phenomenal conclusion. Oh wait, never mind, I can see why. Because along with this, we got Dial of Destiny, which sucked hard, holy cow. Oh, and just as an aside, Dial of Destiny does not count for this ranking because Spielberg didn't direct it. So technically Crystal Skull is the worst Indiana Jones film that came from him. Now don't get me wrong, 20 years after the original trilogy, this movie still knows how to stage some pretty solid action sequences. A couple moments in the story are still genuinely surprising, and there's a few practical effects that I was impressed by. All of that said, this movie is still a gigantic fall from grace to the original trilogy. For reasons that shouldn't be the case, there's a lot in this film that felt wrong. Whether it be more repetitive going through the motions plot, overuse of CGI, forced slapstick, as well as some frankly annoying characters. It all feels more like spectacle than with something of substance on top of the fun you'd expect from this franchise. This is another Indiana Jones film that I thought was pretty weak too, but at least with that one I was having fun while watching it, even if the overall plot and tone was kinda average. This one was just, I can respect what they were trying to do with this one, which is more than I can say for Dial of Destiny, but I just thought there was just too much going on and too many mistakes to make it all flow together. Not terrible, not all that impressive either. Even when I was younger and watching some of Spielberg's early films, I didn't really care that much for Hook. This is another one of Spielberg's more controversial films. Some people really love it, which is cool, but then there are others such as myself that kinda don't buy into it that much. So Robin Williams plays a grown-up Peter Pan who gets kidnapped, along with his kids, by Captain Hook, played by Dustin Hoffman? Wow. I'd only ever known him as Master Shifu from Kung Fu Panda, so seeing and hearing him in this role was total whiplash. Anyway, so with the help of Tinkerbell and the Lost Boys, Peter Pan learns how to be himself again and stop Hook from killing his kids. Hooray! It's a fine premise, and there's a couple decent heartfelt moments here and there. The set design is impressive, there's a couple good jokes, and a few likable and charming characters. But on a plot level, it gets pretty meandering and a little boring, particularly around the middle. The two subplots centered on Peter Pan trying to be himself again and Captain Hook manipulating his son into becoming evil are fine, but I didn't get fully sucked into them as much as the movie clearly wanted me to. The visual effects weren't too impressive either, especially on Tinkerbell. Why is she so bright when she's flying half the time? Yeah, I don't know, this movie tried, but not hard enough, in my opinion. Still, it's another film I'm happy if you like more than I do. The Sugarland Express was Steven Spielberg's first attempt at a theatrical feature, being fictionalized on actual events of the 1969 kidnap of Texas State Trooper Kenneth Crone by fugitives Robert and Ela Faye Dent in their attempt to reclaim their son from foster care. The film follows that structure with this clueless couple who slowly realize that there may not be a happy ending for either of them or their child while on the run from the police. You really get an early glimpse of some of Spielberg's most iconic pizzazz in terms of the technical aspect of the film. So many uniquely filmed shots and chase sequences galore make this film a relatively fun experience, but I think the premise starts to wear a little thin around the second half. I don't buy that much of the couple being criminals, they're just kinda bland and the performances don't help either. The second half is a lot more engaging, especially towards the end, but I wish the story and characters were wound tight overall. As is, for Spielberg's first theatrical film, it's decent, but you're not missing much by skipping out on it. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is the other weaker Indiana Jones film. It exists as one of the most take it or leave it films in both this series and Spielberg's whole filmography. There's plenty of things to love and hate about this movie. On the more negative side, before getting into the positives, yeah, it's pretty racist. I think you can see that coming from a mile away with its portrayal of Indian people. The pacing's also really choppy, with some weird transitions from fast and slow exposition and action, and it takes a weird long while for things to go anywhere until the end. Some of the characters in this are also kind of annoying, especially Willie Scott. Every single time she opened her mouth, I wanted to stab my chin with the fork that killed Thanos in Squid Game Season 2. Now, on the more positive side of things, it's so damn fun, oh my god. Once the opening is over, the second and third acts get so much better with unnecessary but awesome as hell absurdity, dread, and terror. The first act had a pretty absurd raft survival that I enjoyed, but it does not top the minecart chase, the fiery pit, the fight on the bridge. God, it's so exciting. It was definitely worth making it through the decent but pretty boring first half. Oh yeah, and the relationship between Indy and Short Round is really sweet. Like I said, this is a movie with incredible highs and insufferable lows, with plenty of action and heartfelt moments, and yet it's got so much stupid stuff in it that it doesn't hold up compared to some of the other films in the series. But it did give us Short Round, the best character in both this movie and the entire franchise. Congrats to Ke Huy Quan for being a great actor this early in his career. Bridge of Spies is pretty okay. There's not a ton to say about this movie. It's a decent historical film. I went into it not really knowing what to expect going in, and I found it to be a decent Cold War drama. That's this fascinating look at two men dedicated to fulfilling their responsibilities and doing what's right while under political and public pressure. I like the two main characters to an extent, and Tom Hanks and Mark Rylance give pretty solid performances. They have good on-screen chemistry, and I bought into the relationship they slowly form together over the course of the film. The movie kinda loses me towards the middle, where Tom Hanks has to negotiate a prisoner exchange. It's not bad, but it's pretty repetitive and not as engaging as the rest of the film. In general, this is a nice-looking movie, and a decent enough watch if you're a history buff, but one watch was enough for me. Okay, not one of my favorites. Amistad is another decent historical drama, based on a true story about the Spanish slave ship in 1839, showcasing the slaves rising up against their oppressors. Then once they come to shore to America, they get captured and lose their freedom. Yeah, I don't know, this whole stretch of the movie isn't bad, and I'm still relatively invested in the story, and this is based on a true historical event, but the first 15 or 20 minutes or so are what really hooked me, and once that's over, well, I didn't hate the rest of it, and there were still plenty of good dramatic moments. I wish we didn't take this complete dive into this kinda interesting, but also kinda boring second half. And there's a couple of characters that don't really add anything to the story, especially Morgan Freeman's character is this free man who's apparently a fictional person completely unrelated from the events that actually happened. I found his addition weird. But hey, it's still well acted, the music is great, as far as historically accurate films go, this one ain't bad. I just wish we spent more time on characters that actually mattered to the story, and the first 15 minutes are still peak. Empire of the Sun is an okay movie that's really trying to aim for greatness. A movie that takes you into this different time and place, and tells the story about a kid who gets separated from his parents during a time of war, slowly becoming disillusioned by the world around him, and being a brutal depiction of a loss of innocence. It has all the right ingredients, and yet I don't think all the heaviness for the story was fully there. Some parts are a little too filler-coded, while others come off as kinda lighthearted, which I can somewhat get since the story's being told through the eyes of a kid, played by Christian Bale, holy moly. But they don't fit at all in what's supposed to be a deeply emotional tale. As is, it's not bad, but it is a little hard to get invested in this kid's struggle. Things thankfully do pick up when the third act starts. All the weight that should have been in the second act are there. It's just frustrating that said second act didn't match that. They were so close to making something good and they sort of missed a potential winner. Maybe I'm making it sound worse than it actually is. It still has plenty of good moments, and I was definitely invested enough in this kid's journey, but I wish we got to see more of it. Spielberg kinda lacked the chops at this stage in his career to make this as great as it could have been. Fortunately, we got the rest of his filmography to cover, so let's waste no more time and finally get into the good stuff. Okay, so for some reason my audio got a little different sounding at this part of the video. Just wanted to address that before going any further. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, let's just keep going.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Munich is what I would describe as Spielberg's most morally complex film. It's gained some controversy over the years, particularly within the Jewish community, for historical inaccuracies, its portrayal of Palestinians in the Israeli Secret Service, and the film's depiction of moral ambiguity. I don't want to delve too deeply into the backlash, but I will say that it's definitely a good movie. The tone is very dark, more so than a lot of Spielberg's other films. There's a lot of scenes that left me on edge, though I think the way its subject matter was portrayed was kinda too ambitious and repetitive. It's basically assassination attempts and contemplation on whether or not revenge is the best way to go. Also, there's a sex scene that was a bit much, but the film did reel me back in during the last act or so. Certainly not a favorite for me, and again, I don't want to get into the specifics surrounding its controversy for obvious reasons, but it is still a very good film. The Color Purple is another that has been deemed a controversial film from Spielberg. A lot of the criticisms I see coming out of this movie are mainly rooted from its deviations to the original book, in terms of depiction of black men, sexual violence, and explicit content, and in general that Spielberg wasn't the right person to direct this movie, all of which I can totally understand. This is a movie that's bolstered by excellent performances, a good score, solid pacing, and plenty of exceptional sequences that got to me a little bit. But yeah, I don't think Spielberg was the right guy for this particular story. A subject matter like this, I feel, would have fitted better if it was directed by someone who actually understands the experience of being part of a black family and the dangers that can come from it. A lot of his direction doesn't fully click. Some parts do, but there are others that can come off as a bit jarring. But hey, it still tells a great story and has some amazing sequences, even if the entire package doesn't have those Spielbergisms. Speaking of Spielbergisms, to this day, E.T. stands as one of the most popular and acclaimed features Steven Spielberg has ever made. Every review I've seen of this movie says the same thing. It was the movie that solidified Spielberg's status as a storyteller, inspiring filmmakers of all ages and influencing the landscapes of family-oriented cinema. All of which are very true points, and I can absolutely see where the hype is coming from with this movie. But as for me, I think it's just good. For the longest time, I've always considered this film to be good since I was a kid, and never really changed my opinion on it. The first hour or so is really charming, but a little too long. The conflict's a bit weak, and the lack of any special filmmaking, until the climax, brings it below some of Spielberg's other films. Don't get me wrong, this movie is by no means devoid of Spielberg magic. The child characters are all super charming, the climax is filled with emotions that I distinctly remember feeling even as a little kid. The flying bike sequence everyone loves to talk about is of course classic. And I'll admit, I may have gotten a little misty-eyed during A.T.'s goodbye. In general, I can see why so many people consider this as one of Spielberg's greatest, but for me personally, it's kind of like how I feel about Toy Story 1. Good and revolutionary for its time, but not great on the whole, which is an opinion you have every right to ignore. Jaws is another Spielberg classic by a ton of people. It's another I remember watching a long time ago, and much like E.T., I think this one is also pretty solid. This is a movie that really put Steven Spielberg on the map, being the revolution of summer blockbusters. It famously worked within the limitations of the wonky shark prop they had at the time and opted not to show it for the majority of the film, and instead used clever underwater shots and chilling music in the background. This movie is filled with suspense and tension, but I do think it kind of falters in the middle. Like, a little too much time is dedicated to these three guys on board a boat, and not enough time is dedicated to seeing whether these innocent people on the beach are gonna die or not. It's not like the second half isn't terrible by any means, but I was a little more interested in what was happening for the first hour, and the intensity of the conflict isn't fully there. But overall, a really good Kickstarter for plenty of Spielberg newcomers such as myself. War of the Worlds is good. It's a solid alien apocalypse film that really wastes no time in the first half. It perfectly captures the dangers of this alien invasion, showcasing the terror of the conflict and not only the threat of the aliens, but also the mistrust of the people on Earth as they slowly become more and more desperate for survival. So much so that they become driven with craze. Seriously, that whole car scene when the mob attacks Tom Cruise's family was nuts. From the excellent cinematography and visual effects, it all makes for one hell of an experience. Tom Cruise is also great in this, because no mission is impossible without family. God, that joke sounded so much better in my head. It's obviously not perfect. There are some decisions the characters make that are really stupid, especially the son character. He's so dumb. Why does he just leave his family? What was the point of that scene? Also, the alien creatures look so bad. Like, how do we go from fantastic CG alien ships that perfectly blend into the environments to this? What the hell? This is some of those instances where stuff like this would have been better left to our own imagination. But overall, a very good and very exciting film. I very much had a good time with it in spite of its flaws. Also, I should read the original book sometime.
Great!
Duel, the very first Steven Spielberg film. Technically, this was a TV movie not meant to be released theatrically, but that doesn't stop it from being a deeply unexpected thrill ride. Basically, it's about a man getting chased by a truck driver he passes on the highway and who tries to kill him as a result. It's a very straightforward, albeit simple plot, but the way they go about it is so exciting, and I love the fact that you never see the truck driver. It adds so much more to his ominous nature. The entire movie consists of tense road chases, all with some slick cinematography and very little music in the background. It's amazing what Spielberg could accomplish at this early stage in his career in the year 1971. Granted, it doesn't do anything to try and expand upon its basic premise. It's just meant to be a movie that escalates and leaves you on the edge of your seat, and it delivers just that. The Adventures of Tintin is somehow the only animated film on this list that Spielberg has ever made. I don't mean that in a bad way. I find it cool as it adds to just how talented he can be when it comes to any film genre, as well as any film medium, especially one with unlimited opportunities for creativity. I am shocked that not enough people talk about this movie. There's so many unique transition shots, great action set pieces and sequences, as well as probably the best one-shot takes I've ever seen in an animated film, and probably any film, period. It's that well done. The motion capture character designs leave something to be desired, as it looks pretty dated nowadays, but it's not the worst. In addition, the pacing is pretty fast with no breaks in the story. You kind of rush to the next action scene to keep the story going. Does this ruin the experience for me? Oh no, of course not. I'm one of the few people who doesn't mind the fast pace of the Mario movie, since that movie's meant to give you fun action scenes. The same can be said for this movie. Some more character moments would have been good, but it still tells an exciting story and delivers some of the sickest action you'll ever witness if you watch this movie. There's still plenty to enjoy with this overlooked gem. West Side Story is one of the most enjoyable recent Spielberg films. I had seen the original West Side Story musical, and this adaptation did not disappoint. It excelled in nearly every level. The camera work is incredible. The set design looks and feels like a classic 60s musical, which is funny since the original musical came out in 1961. The choreography and musical numbers are outstanding. Rachel Zegler and Mike Feist deliver fantastic performances. And even though I had seen the original musical, the ending still got to me somehow. I wish the characters were more engaging and the movie goes on for a little too long, but that aside, this is probably one of the best movie musicals to date. Makes me wonder why Spielberg hasn't made any more musicals like it. The Terminal is a simple but very charming movie. Tom Hanks plays an Eastern European man who isn't allowed to return home, nor allowed entry to the United States due to both his background and his country is at war. So until this is resolved, he has to live in this airport. It's a pretty simple plot, and there are some moments that feel a little cheesy and weird, but for the most part, it's charm overload. Tom Hanks' character is so endearing, who befriends nearly every single person he meets in this airport. He wastes no time in making the best out of a bad situation, bringing two lovebirds together, helping a janitor with cleaning the floor, getting a job, going on a date or two with a flight attendant. It's really enjoyable stuff. Eventually, he's finally able to leave the airport, but not before giving a farewell to his new friends and love interest. Aww. In spite of how basic this movie may seem and look on the outside, there's quite a lot to enjoy and get out of it. Kinda like Luca in a lot of ways. Sometimes the simpler stories can be all the sweeter. Close Encounters of the Third Kind is Spielberg's best alien film. If anything, I was more invested in the family drama, specifically this one man trying to recreate his encounter with the aliens, ultimately separating himself from his family due to his insanity. Of course, the alien stuff is peak. There's so many shots and sequences that reflect the awe and horror of these beings, portraying the overwhelm of abduction, not by showing the aliens' physical appearances, but instead by using shaking household appliances and multicolored lighting to reflect the upliftness and danger of these fascinating yet terrifying creatures. Some scenes outside of this drag a little, the characters are kinda one-note and forgettable. Not every single plot point to get to the ending reveal was necessary, but none of these detract from the fact that this is one of Spielberg's best works that does a near-perfect job of making you fearful of these beings all the way to the end. You definitely owe it to yourself to seek this one out if you haven't already. Catch Me If You Can is such a fun movie, being this runaway caper film with Tom Hanks trying to catch Leo DiCaprio playing as a con artist. Both performances are really good and charismatic, and I love the connection they slowly form together despite being enemies. It's also consistently funny with a ton of great jokes from both the cast and the absurdity of the story, but there's also a good amount of maturity to it too, with a lot to say about how divorce can affect a child mentally, especially in terms of how much it affects Leo's character with his parents having been in an affair. It's interesting stuff, and there are parts that got to me. That's how well balanced the tone was. Overall, a very, very good and very, very fun movie. I had a great time with it. Another one of my personal favorites. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the very first Indiana Jones movie. It's really good, though I'd call it a fair middle ground between Temple of Doom and The Last Crusade, riding the highs of the latter's greatness and the former's insanity. For the most part, it plays fairly straight as this exciting adventure. The action is insane. Stuff like the opening, the climax, the car chase, the marketplace fight. Ooh, so good. Indy himself is a fun character, and Harrison Ford's performance sells it. So committed to all the absurdity, as well as charismatic. The score by John Williams is also fantastic and enhances the story, action beat, and character moment perfectly. Some of the best work in his entire career. I only wish some of the other characters were stronger. The supporting cast and villain aren't bad by any means, but I kinda lean more towards Short Round from Temple of Doom in terms of being a great supporting character, or Elsa from Last Crusade in terms of being a great villain with her seductive nature. Here, I like Marion, but the majority of the cast is relatively standard, and I wish I bought into their plights and motivations a little more. But without a doubt, this is one of the most action-filled movies I've ever seen, and it only paved the way for even crazier and more exciting adventures in the years to come. Until it became instantly stale, but we're not going to talk about that right now. I see some people calling The Post boring, and to that I'm like, how? This is one of the most gripping recent films in Spielberg's library. It's a semi-fictional story about the Washington Post room getting their hands on the Pentagon Papers and racing to catch up with the New York Times to expose a massive cover-up of government secrets that span 3 decades and 4 US presidents. A lot of this movie's entertainment value comes from its franticness, fully immersing you into the chaos of a newsroom, with a lot of unique tracking shots, top-notch acting, and fast pacing that keeps you engaged the whole way through. The story is very straightforward, but the way they execute it is very interesting, giving us this glimpse of these journalists trying to do what feels right to them in spite of the stress they all feel. It explores themes of government corruption, women in leadership, and the vital role of journalism in a democracy, all in a very subtle and non-preachy in-your-face way, culminating in a landmark legal battle between the press and the government. There's a couple corny moments here and there, especially in the ending, but it's still an engaging, well-crafted film that I'm shocked isn't talked about enough. I highly recommend it. Minority Report is another one I'm shocked barely anyone talks about. It's just such a great and creative action sci-fi film, filled to the brim with unique concepts, thrilling action sequences, mother-flipping Tom Cruise, come on. This movie does a great job of establishing its world and how everything operates, being a story about cops who prevent crimes through these psychic men who can see them before they occur. They predict Tom Cruise is a mass murderer, causing him to go on the run from his own crew. It's a straightforward narrative, but with tons of excellent cinematography, great acting, a creative world, fun twists and surprises, clever details and symbolism, with an interesting sci-fi spin on it all. It makes for an exciting ride. The lengths this movie goes to as Tom Cruise tries to avoid capture is insane, and there were multiple sequences that kept me consistently engaged. Only Tom Cruise, man. My only real issue is the pacing. It can get pretty fast, and there isn't as much time for things to settle in both the movie itself and your mind. It's a little hard to explain at first with everything moving at a brisk pace. But overall, such a fantastic film. Another high recommendation. I really wasn't expecting much from artificial intelligence. This was such a shocking yet super investing watch from start to finish. So it's the future and AI robots are a part of human society. One family's kid has a rare disease and is under cryostasis, so the family adopts a robot boy named David. It starts off fairly simple for the first hour, where the family has a hard time accepting him. Then it takes this ridiculous left turn where the mom abandons him in the woods to avoid him getting killed. And from there, it becomes a fascinating retelling of the Pinocchio story, where we get to see David journey throughout all sorts of different worlds and places, and encounters multiple quirky characters, all as he tries to find the blue fairy who can turn him into a real boy so he can be with his mother again. This movie has such a deep emotional core, and I felt for David numerous times. I wanted to see him be okay in the end and be with his mother, even though it seemed impossible. The story is pretty episodic and goes in so many different directions that I wasn't expecting, and it makes for both an exciting yet devastating experience. I even got a little teary-eyed during the ending. That's how well this movie sold me on the emotions of the story and its main character. And between this and Sixth Sense, Haley Joel Osment proves how much of a phenomenal child actor he is. There are a few slow parts here and there, but this was nonetheless an amazing film from start to finish, which is something I never would have expected to be among one of my top 10 favorite films from Spielberg. But man, did he manage to pull it off. Like, this is a much better Pinocchio film than Pinocchio itself. Please seek this one out. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is the best Indiana Jones film, hands down. It tops Raiders of the Lost Ark in terms of excitement, engagement, and emotion. After Temple of Doom, this truly was a fantastic return to form, taking everything that was great about Raiders of the Lost Ark and expanding upon those elements with a much stronger, even more engaging story, and a fun central relationship between Indy and his father. Plus, the villains are better, the set pieces are stronger, it's dark when it needs to be with good comedy to balance things out. That sense of adventure is back and in full force, taking our heroes to various locations around the globe, including a face-off with Hitler himself, which shocked me. Everything's very well paced, it's gripping, there's an amazing variety in each of the set pieces in action. There is not a single moment when you're not having a great time. On top of all the action, it has a lot of good heart to it, as we see Indy and his father reconnect with each other and repair the relationship. The only minuscule flaw I have with this movie is the opening. It's not bad, but it's pretty ridiculous how a young Indy gets his whip, hat, and survival skills this early in his life. Oh, how convenient. But that's my only real nitpick. Overall though, a fantastic film that oozes fun throughout. If Disney knew when to let franchises rest and leave them be, I would have been all for Last Crusade being the final film of the Indiana Jones series. Obviously that's not realistic because this is Disney we're talking about, but oh well. This is it, ladies and gentlemen. We have now entered the perfect 10 out of 10 zone. These last 4 films are the reasons why I and many others adore Steven Spielberg for what he's able to do with any film and any film genre. So let's get into it. Jurassic Park is phenomenal in every way. I'm stating the obvious with this one. Everyone has seen it. It's easily one of the greatest cinematic achievements of all time. It feels like the movie Spielberg wanted to make with Jaws in terms of being this unexpected thrill ride, but couldn't due to the technical limitations at the time. In this movie, he pulls all the stops. I said it before in my billion-dollar movie ranking, but ever since 1993, even after more than 20 years, this movie hasn't aged a day. The incredible dinosaur world, all the characters that bring their own unique charm and flair, the incredibly well-made and enticing action sequences, it does all of it right, putting all these simple pieces together and delivering what has become one of the most influential pieces of art to come out of the medium of film. I could go on and on about how good this movie is, but I think you already know why it's a masterpiece. I still love it with all my heart. It's the defining film of Spielberg's entire filmography. It continues to stand the test of time. It's gosh darn Jurassic Park. What could possibly top it? I'll be honest, even though this is at number 3 on the list, The Fabelmans might be my favorite Steven Spielberg film. It's such a clever film, being this autobiographical story about how Steven Spielberg got his life started as a filmmaker. It's the culmination of his entire career and life, being a semi-fictionalized but mostly authentic depiction of how he became the director we all know and love, and watching his spark for filmmaking grow is really compelling. Out of all of his movies, this was the one that really related to me, especially when it came to Sammy's early stages of making short films with his family. His mother encouraging his early filmmaking by allowing him to film a fake train to process his fear, his siblings often appearing in his homemade productions, his father giving him a proper editing machine, his father's friend and business partner played by Seth Rogen by the way, accompanying the family on a camping trip where Sammy films them. I've been filmmaking for a little over 6 years now, and in those 6 years my passion for filmmaking has grown and grown. Starting out as making simple funny episodes as part of my own little homemade series with my friends and family, who've been nothing but supportive to me my whole life, to now being on a platform for me to talk about the latest movies and TV shows, analyze some of my favorite childhood content, make movie remakes with my very own toys and props, all while discovering and learning brand new editing techniques and styles. I've always just made the kind of videos I wanted to make at any certain time. As a result, because of how much I saw myself in the main character's shoes, it stuck with me on a deeply personal level. It's stuff like this that serves a great gateway to the art of cinema, and this movie delivers that magic on nearly every cylinder. On top of that, it's funny, it's deeply emotional. Very few films in Spielberg's library, even many of the great ones, hold as much power as this one. Maybe I'm speaking from a bias level, I don't know. All I know is that this movie is simply fantastic, and easily my favorite film from Steven Spielberg. And we're not even done with the list yet. Saving Private Ryan. Where do I even start? This film has been highly ranked among a lot of other people's Spielberg's rankings. Most people love this movie and consider it to be one of, if not, the greatest war film of all time, and probably the best we'll ever get. And honestly, I totally get it. More than any other war film we've gotten in the past 2.5 decades, none of them have been able to capture what this movie accomplished. Telling a story where you get what you would normally expect from a war film in terms of gigantic, thrilling battles and action sequences, plus a scene of a sniper shooting my dad down during a bike ride, without relying on such to be the main selling point. At its core, it's a story about Tom Hanks and his troops on a mission motivated by a desire to protect a mother worried about losing her son. It's driven by emotion rather than just the logic and dangers of the situation, and yet it's still able to deliver that power of extra human emotion, where every single one of these troops know they're facing danger and probably not every single one of them is coming back alive. They just know they have to in order to achieve their primary goal of finding Private Ryan and saving everyone else around them. Saving life is a simple concept, it's a clear motivation, but war is very unfortunately hell, which means that the choices you make may come across as unclear and unprecise. It's a movie that works on numerous levels, touches on a lot of emotions, and really makes you wonder if these people should be doing this and go on this mission in spite of what's going on. As a result, you feel a sense of rooting for these men, as they're willing to lay down their lives, choosing to put themselves in danger in the hopes of saving someone they hardly know. You celebrate that victory when they finally do accomplish their goal, while also wondering if they made the right call. It makes the experience devastating, of course, but also incredibly engaging and compelling. This is another absolutely exceptional feature, one that would by far be the crowning jewel of Spielberg's whole career, if it wasn't for one more film. Honestly, what else was number one gonna be? Schindler's List is arguably Spielberg's greatest achievement that trumps even his finer popular works. While he's made a variety of classics in a variety of genres, no one would ever expect him to make a movie as brutal and devastating as this film. It's unforgettable, not in the sense of being this awe-inspiring tale. No, it's unforgettable in the sense that it doesn't shy away from showcasing the absolute atrocities that came from the Holocaust. The desperate measures that children went through in order to survive, the sheer inhumanity and systematic violence. It tells this horrifying story while also having little glimmers of hope and redemption, in particular with the journey of Oskar Schindler, going from a selfish capitalist who slowly develops into a genuine hero who can no longer ignore the suffering and does everything he can to try and save as many people as possible. The lives he saved do indeed leave a huge impact and make for such an uplifting and powerful ending, but it's the losses of so many other people's lives that are impossible to ignore. It's a movie that, like with Saving Private Ryan, doesn't shy away from showing why war is awful, what lengths people are willing to go to, as this isn't just a story, it's a story about real-life historical events. There's a lot of people who are genuinely really cruel, but there are others who still have the goodness inside of them to do whatever they can to ensure people's safety, even in the worst possible situations. I don't think I can say any more about this film for obvious reasons. Just know that there has never been, and probably never will be, another film in Spielberg's filmography that reached the same amount of power and emotion of Schindler's List. Very fitting that his only Best Picture win is his Best Picture. So that was my Steven Spielberg ranking. Watching these films with so many different styles, tones, universes, and themes that all range from bona fide classics to underrated hidden gems, I can't stress enough how much cinema you're missing out on if for some reason you have never seen at least one of these movies. I love Steven Spielberg, and I am never gonna stop loving him, and I will forever be grateful for the magic and wonder his movies bring to the table. There's something in this man's filmography for anyone, cinephile or casual moviegoer, to get out of. Anyway, that's all for me, folks. Thanks for watching. Also, if you want to see the full list of my Spielberg ranking, I'll put a link to it from my Letterboxd account, which you can find in the description. With that said, I'll see y'all in the next one.